Public opinion is formed by people's beliefs. Like political identification, people's beliefs often form when they are very young. Beliefs are closely held ideas that support our values and expectations about life and politics. For example, the idea that we are entitled to equality, liberty, freedom, and privacy is a belief most people in the United States share. We may acquire this belief by growing up in the United States. Today, and over the course of the last decade or so, research shows that Americans have become more polarized, meaning extreme opposites, more polarized beliefs than ever before exist. Beliefs are discussed further in Module 4.4. Our attitudes are also affected by our personal beliefs and represent the preferences we form based on our life experiences and values. Over time, our beliefs and our attitudes about people, events, ideas, they will become a set of norms or accepted ideas about what we may feel should happen in our society or what is right for the government to do in any situation. In this way, attitudes and beliefs form the foundation for opinions. Your textbook goes into detail about how experiences shape opinion. It states that opinions are based on heuristics or on research. Heuristics can be defined as shortcuts or rules of thumb, like cues for decision-making. Opinions based on heuristics rather than research are more likely to change when the cue changes. So, if a voter begins listening to a new source of information or moves to a new town, that influences and those cues that he or she meets will change. Most importantly, these opinions can be measured by polling. The people who take the polls are called pollsters. Generally, a random sampling of people is taken from different parts of the country that represent different elements of society, Catholics, Baptists, working moms, etc., with the idea that they represent the country's opinions as a whole. A representative sample consists of a group whose demographic distribution is similar to that of the overall population. For example, nearly 51% of the US population is female. To match this demographic distribution of women, any poll intended to measure what most Americans think about an issue should survey a sample containing just slightly more women than men. Generally, the theory of polling relies on three things. A random selection, meaning that the person chosen must not be more or less likely to be chosen than others. In other words, not picked because she or he is likely to answer the question in a certain way. The size of the poll must include enough people to represent the diversity of the population. And variation, meaning not every Catholic sampled, for example, represents all Catholic viewpoints across the nation. So the final poll will allow for a margin of error. Gallup and Harris polls are two of the most reliable polls. Gallup usually interviews about 500 respondents. Pew Research polls are another. Pew relies on an even broader sample, often anywhere from 1,000 to about 1,500 people. Polls will show types of opinion, such as whether consensus opinion or divided opinion exists over a particular candidate or issue. Consensus opinion means that a large majority of Americans favor it, and that forms the generally agreed upon belief, or forms what's called a consensus. Divided opinion means that people disagree, and bimodal opinion means that the public opinion is almost evenly divided. A normal distribution, when graphed, will reveal a bell curve with the fewest numbers of people being of extreme opinion on either end of the graph and the greatest number of people in the middle. This is usually how people describe their political leanings. Few people will say that they are extremely liberal or extremely conservative, for example. Sometimes polling can actually lead to inaccurate predictions. Polls determined that Dewey was going to beat Truman in the 1948 presidential election. Even Harry Truman's wife, Bess Truman, thought that he was going to lose. He went to bed on election night only to be woken up by his Secret Service agent who told him that he had won. What you're looking at is the erroneous declaration on the front page of the Chicago Tribune the next morning stating, "Dewey defeats Truman." Just look at that broad smile on Truman's face. Public opinion can change over time. For example, support for a foreign war may decline over time if it drags out, like with the limited wars in Korea and Vietnam. It took Congress until 1986 to appropriate funding for a Korean War memorial. The fact that it took 33 years reflects the unpopularity of the memory of this war in the American psyche. If political opinion remains stable over time, this is called a stable distribution. In the 21st century, it became more difficult to get a random sampling of people's opinions via phone. People hesitated to pick up that phone if they did not recognize the phone number. Telemarketers were calling people, and people were being inundated with those phone calls. The result was that in 2008, some 80% of calls from telemarketers went unanswered. Today, more and more polls are taken online. People are asked, however, to rate so much of what they do on a daily basis, such as the purchase of a pair of shoes and their experience ordering at a kiosk in a fast food restaurant, that we will see if this translates into difficulty in getting polling questions answered online as well. Many of the polls predicting the results of the 2016 presidential election were inaccurate. Polling has increased as politicians seem to be in perpetual campaign mode. President Donald Trump held a fundraiser for his 2020 re-election campaign within the very first month of him being in office. Politicians want people to continue to contribute money to their campaigns, and therefore they need to know that these campaigns are listening to and acting on their needs. And one way to do this is to cite poll numbers. Studies have not clearly shown, however, whether politicians consistently act on polling data. Continue to review this video as many times as you need to, go through the readings, and review the questions.